The snow fell in thick sheets across the Dakota plains, turning the world into a maze of white shadows and bitter wind. Sarah Crawford ran through it all, her thin dress offering no protection against the January cold of 1876. Her feet, wrapped only in torn stockings, left bloody prints in the fresh powder. Behind her, somewhere in that wall of white, Thomas Marlowe hunted. She had married him 6 months ago in Boston. A respected banker, they said. A man of means and refinement. Her parents had been thrilled. Sarah had been hopeful. She had been so terribly wrong. The bruises started after the first week. Then came the locked doors, the controlled meals, the way he watched her every movement like a hawk studying prey. But it was the look in his eyes last night that finally broke through her paralysis. He had sharpened his hunting knife at the dinner table, running his thumb along the blade, and smiled at her. That smile held no humanity in it. Only hunger. She had fled while he slept, taking nothing but the clothes on her back. The train station was 8 miles away. She had made it 4 before he discovered her absence. Now, exhausted and freezing, Sarah stumbled down a ravine, catching herself on frozen branches that tore at her hands. The wind carried his voice to her. "Sarah. You cannot survive out here alone. Come back, and I will be merciful." His promises were poison. She knew what his mercy looked like. It wore the face of his first wife, the one who had supposedly died of fever. The one whose diary Sarah had found hidden behind a loose brick in the cellar. The entries had ended mid-sentence, and Sarah knew exactly why. The landscape shifted as she ran. The sparse trees gave way to open plain, and Sarah's heart sank. No cover. No shelter. Just endless white stretching in every direction. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. Her lungs burned with each gasping breath. The cold was seeping into her bones, and she knew that even if Marlowe didn't catch her, the winter would claim her instead. Then she saw them. 3 riders emerged from the snow like spirits, moving in perfect silence across the frozen ground. Even through her fading vision, Sarah could see they were Lakota warriors. Their horses were sturdy ponies, bred for this brutal climate. The men sat tall and still, watching her with dark, evaluating eyes. Terror and hope warred in her chest. She had heard stories about Indians since arriving in Dakota Territory. Settlers spoke of them in hushed, frightened tones. But she had also heard other stories, whispered by the women at the trading post. Stories of honor, of protection offered to those who asked properly. Sarah's legs gave out. She collapsed into the snow 20 feet from the riders. The world tilted and spun. Somewhere behind her, Marlowe's shouts grew closer. She looked up at the warriors, and with the last of her strength, raised her hands in a gesture of supplication. "Please," she whispered. "Please help me." The central rider, older than the others with gray streaking his long black hair, studied her. His face was weathered by years of sun and wind, marked with the deep lines of a man who had seen much of both joy and sorrow. His eyes, sharp as flint, moved from her bloody feet to her bruised throat, then past her to where Marlowe's voice echoed across the plain. The warrior spoke in Lakota to his companions. One of them nodded and rode forward, dismounting with fluid grace. He was younger, perhaps 20, with the lean build of a runner. Without a word, he lifted Sarah onto his horse, then swung up behind her. His arm around her waist was impersonal but steady, holding her upright against the exhaustion that threatened to pull her under. The older warrior turned his horse, positioning himself between Sarah and the direction of Marlowe's approach. He sat motionless, his hand resting on the rifle across his lap. His face showed no expression, but Sarah sensed the decision being made behind those ancient eyes. Thomas Marlowe burst through the tree line, his expensive coat already crusted with snow. He stopped when he saw the warriors. For a moment, silence hung over the frozen plain, broken only by the wind's howl. Then the old warrior spoke, his English clear and cold as the winter air around them. "She is under our protection now. Turn back." Marlowe's face twisted with rage, all pretense of civilization falling away like a discarded mask. He pointed at Sarah with a trembling finger, his voice rising to compete with the wind. "That woman is my wife. She belongs to me. You have no right to interfere in matters between a man and his property." The word property hung in the air like a curse. The older warrior's expression remained unchanged, but Sarah felt the younger man behind her tense. The third rider, until now silent, moved his horse slightly forward. He was massive, with shoulders that seemed carved from stone and scars crossing his forearms. "The white man speaks of ownership," the old warrior said, his tone carrying the weight of absolute authority. "But even among your people, a wife is not cattle. This woman runs from death. Anyone with eyes can see it." Marlowe took a step forward, his hand moving toward the pistol at his hip. It was a mistake. The three warriors responded as one, their rifles raising in perfect synchronization. The movement was so fluid, so practiced, that it seemed choreographed. Marlowe froze. "You will start a war," Marlowe hissed. "I am a man of influence. The army will come." The old warrior's laugh was sharp and bitter. "The army comes whether we give you war or peace. That is the only truth your people have ever offered us. But we do not fear your threats, and we do not abandon those who seek refuge. This is our way. Now go, before I decide that one less monster in this world is worth whatever trouble you bring." Something in his tone made it clear this was no idle threat. Marlowe's eyes darted between the three warriors, calculating odds he clearly did not like. His gaze finally settled on Sarah, and the hatred there made her shudder. "This is not over, Sarah. You made vows before God. I will find a way to bring you back where you belong." Then he turned and disappeared into the white storm, leaving only his footprints to mark his presence. Sarah sagged against the young warrior's chest, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion now that the immediate danger had passed. "Ride," the old warrior commanded. "The storm grows worse, and she will not survive it. We must reach the winter camp before nightfall." They rode hard through the blizzard. Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the horse's steady rhythm beneath her and the strong arm keeping her from falling. Time lost meaning. The white world blurred into a dream where nothing existed except cold and motion. When she finally opened her eyes fully, the storm had passed. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Before them, nestled in a valley protected by low hills, stood a camp of perhaps 50 lodges. Smoke rose from the tops of the teepees, promising warmth and life. People moved between the structures, and Sarah could hear voices calling out, dogs barking, children laughing. They rode into the camp center, and immediately people emerged to greet them. The old warrior spoke rapidly in Lakota, gesturing toward Sarah. She caught the word Wasiku woman and little else. The faces surrounding her showed curiosity, concern, and some wariness, but no hostility. A woman approached, older than Sarah by perhaps 15 years, with kind eyes and strong capable hands. She wore a dress of soft deerskin decorated with elaborate beadwork and carried herself with quiet confidence. She spoke to the old warrior, who nodded, then turned to Sarah. "I am Winona," the woman said in careful English. "Wife to Tashunkametu, the man who brought you here. He is chief of this band. You are safe now. Come." Sarah tried to stand as they helped her from the horse, but her legs refused to support her weight. Winona caught her with surprising strength, calling out to others who rushed to assist. They carried her toward one of the larger lodges, and Sarah caught a glimpse of the old warrior watching her. Their eyes met, and he nodded once before turning away to tend his horse. Inside the lodge, warmth enveloped her like her embrace. A fire burned in the center, smoke rising through the opening at the top. Buffalo robes lined the ground, and the walls were decorated with painted scenes of horses and hunts. More women appeared, speaking in low, soothing tones as they began to tend her injuries. They removed her ruined dress, wrapping her instead in soft furs. One woman brought a bowl of warm broth, helping Sarah sip it slowly. Another worked on her frozen feet with gentle, practiced hands, massaging feeling back into the damaged flesh. The pain was intense, but Sarah welcomed it. Pain meant she was alive. Pain meant she had escaped. Winona sat beside her, her presence calming. "Sleep now," she said. "We will talk when you are stronger. You are in Tashunkametu's lodge. No harm will come to you here. This I promise." Sarah wanted to ask questions, to understand what would happen next, but exhaustion dragged at her like chains. Her eyes closed despite her efforts to keep them open. As consciousness faded, she heard voices speaking softly in Lakota, and felt the weight of another buffalo robe being laid gently across her. For the first time in 6 months, Sarah Crawford slept without fear. 3 days passed before Sarah had the strength to stand. Her feet were healing, wrapped in poultices of herbs that Winona changed twice daily. The frostbite had been severe, but the women's skill and the warmth of the lodge had saved her toes. The bruises on her throat and arms faded from purple to yellow-green. Her body mended, but Sarah knew the scars Marlowe had carved into her soul would take far longer to heal. During those days, she learned the rhythms of the camp. She learned that Tashunkametu meant bear horse in Lakota, and that he was indeed a chief, respected not for wealth or birthright but for wisdom earned through 50 winters of life. She learned that Winona was his second wife, his first having died in childbirth along with the baby 10 years earlier. She learned that the young warrior who had carried her was called Mapia Luta, Red Cloud, Tashunkamitta's nephew and student. The third warrior's name was Wakinian Tenka, Great Thunder, and he served as the chief's personal guard. Despite his fearsome appearance, the children loved him, climbing on him like he was a living mountain whenever he sat down. On the fourth morning, Sarah woke to find Tashunkamitta sitting by the fire, smoking a long pipe. He studied her with those sharp eyes that seemed to see through flesh to the truth beneath. "You are stronger now," he said. "It was not a question." "Yes. Thanks to you and your people. I owe you my life." Tashunkamitta waved away her words with his pipe. "Life is not something that can be owned or owed. It simply is. But we should speak of what comes next." Sarah's stomach tightened. She had been avoiding this conversation in her own mind, too afraid to face the reality of her situation. "What will happen to me?" "That depends on what you wish to happen. The winter is hard, and travel is dangerous. The monster who hunts you has not returned, but this means nothing. Men like him do not forget. They do not forgive. He will find allies, perhaps army soldiers, perhaps other settlers. He will come with legal papers that say you belong to him, or he will come with violence. Either way, he will come." The truth of his words settled over Sarah like a cold blanket. She had known this, of course, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. "What can I do? I have nowhere to go. No money. No family who would take me back after I married him. He made sure to isolate me from everyone I knew." "You could stay here," Winona said, entering the lodge with an armful of firewood. She added logs to the fire before sitting beside her husband. "We have sheltered others before. A Crow woman fleeing a cruel husband 2 winters past. A French trapper's daughter who refused the man her father chose. This is not new to us." Tashunkamitta nodded. "But you must understand what this means. If you stay, you become one of us. Not in blood, but in choice. You would learn our ways, work alongside our women, contribute to the community's survival. This is not a hotel like in your white cities. Everyone here has a purpose, a role. Can you accept this?" Sarah looked between them, seeing only sincerity and strength. In Boston, she had been decoration, a pretty thing to hang on Marlowe's arm at social functions. Her opinions hadn't mattered. Her thoughts hadn't been valued. She had been taught that her only worth lay in her ability to please a man, to run his household, to bear his children. The prospect of being valued for actual contribution, for work and skill rather than appearance, was foreign and frightening and absolutely intoxicating. "I can learn," she said. "I want to learn." Winona smiled, the expression transforming her serious face. "Then we begin today. But first, you must understand something about Tashunkamitta and why he helped you." The chief shot his wife a warning look, but she ignored it, continuing to speak. "Many years ago, when my husband was young, he traveled east to trade. In a town called Pittsburgh, he witnessed something. A white man beating his wife in the street. She was crying, begging him to stop, but no one helped her. They walked past as if she did not exist. Tashunkamitta intervened. He pulled the man off her, held him until he calmed. Do you know what happened next?" Sarah shook her head, transfixed by the story. The woman screamed at him. Called him a savage. Demanded he release her husband. The man, once free, had Tashunkamitta arrested. He spent 3 days in jail before the traders he knew could secure his release. The woman returned to her husband, and Tashunkamitta learned that sometimes, people are not ready to be saved. The chief spoke then, his voice heavy with old grief. "For many years, I wondered if I should have done nothing. Let the white man's violence continue, as it was not my concern. But then I would see that woman's face in my dreams, bruised and broken, and I knew I could not live with myself if I turned away from such things. So when we found you in the snow, I saw a second chance. A chance to save someone who actually wanted salvation." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on helping people like me." Tashunkamitta stood, his expression softening slightly. "Come. If you can walk, there is someone you should meet." They emerged from the lodge into bright morning sunlight that made the snow glitter like scattered diamonds. The camp was fully awake now, bustling with activity. Women scraped hides stretched on wooden frames. Men checked weapons and tended horses. Children played a game with a leather ball, their shouts of joy cutting through the crisp air. Several people looked up as Sarah passed, nodding in acknowledgement but not staring. She appreciated their respectful discretion more than they could know. Tashunkamitta led her to a smaller lodge at the camp's edge. Before entering, he spoke quietly. This woman I want you to meet has walked a path similar to yours. Perhaps speaking with her will help you understand what lies ahead. Inside, Sarah found herself face to face with a woman unlike anyone she had ever seen. She was perhaps 30 years old, with hair the color of wheat and eyes the blue of a summer sky. But she wore full Lakota dress, moved with the confident grace of someone completely comfortable in her surroundings, and spoke in Lakota to the two young children who played near the fire. When she saw Sarah, she switched to English with barely an accent. Welcome. I am called Wikapi Waste now, but I was born Margaret Sullivan in Ohio. Sarah sank onto a buffalo robe, her legs still too weak for prolonged standing. You were a captive. Margaret's laugh was sharp but not unkind. Is that what you think? That I was stolen away and held against my will? She shook her head. No, Sarah Crawford. I chose this life, just as you are being given the chance to choose it now. I don't understand. I was married to a farmer, Margaret said, her voice taking on the flat tone of someone recounting facts that no longer held emotional weight. A God-fearing man, the preacher said. For 3 years, he used that God as an excuse for his fists. When I dared speak back, when I questioned his authority, when I failed to have supper ready at precisely 6 o'clock, he beat me. He quoted scripture while he did it. Told me I was fulfilling my wifely duty by accepting correction. Sarah recognized the story because it was her own, just with different details. How did you escape? I didn't escape. I ran, like you ran, into winter without preparation or planning. The Lakota found me half dead from cold. Tashunkamitta's band, actually, though it was 15 years ago. They brought me here, healed me, and when spring came, they offered to take me to the nearest fort. Margaret paused, stirring the fire with a stick. I refused. Because for the first time in my life, I was treated like a person with value beyond my ability to serve a man's needs. Women here work hard, make no mistake, but they are respected. Heard. Valued. No man strikes his wife here. If he did, he would be exiled or worse. But your family, your old life, had nothing for me but pain and judgment. Here, I found something better. I married a warrior named Heihakasapa, Black Elk. He died 2 winters ago hunting buffalo. I grieved him honestly, because he was a good man who treated me as an equal partner. Can you say the same about your husband, Sarah? The question hung in the air, demanding honesty. Sarah thought of Marlowe's charm in public and his cruelty in private. She thought of his promises that turned to poison, his love that was really possession. No. He was a monster wearing a gentleman's mask. Then you must decide if you will return to monsters, or if you will stay here and learn to become something new. But I will warn you now, the choice is not simple. If you stay, your old world will call you traitor. Your people will say you abandoned civilization for savagery. The army will not recognize your choice. They see all white people among the Indians as captives needing rescue, whether we want rescue or not. Tashunkamitu entered the lodge then, accompanied by Mapia Luta. The young warrior carried a bundle wrapped in leather. The chief's face was grave. News has reached us from the trading post, he said without preamble. The monster has been there, spreading lies. He tells everyone that you were taken by force, that you need rescue. He has convinced the fort commander to send soldiers to negotiate your release. Sarah's blood ran cold. When? They will arrive within 3 days, perhaps sooner if the weather holds. They will come under flag of truce, following white man's protocol for hostage situations. His voice carried bitter irony on the last 2 words. Then we send her away before they arrive, Mapia Luta said, his English rougher than the chief's but serviceable. North to the Crow Lands, or west to the mountains. We have allies who would shelter her. No. Tashunkamitu shook his head. If we hide her, it proves their story that we took her by force. It gives them excuse to attack. We have women and children here, elders who cannot fight, young ones who deserve to see another spring. I will not risk them all. Then what do we do? Margaret asked. Let them take her back to him? We let Sarah decide. The chief turned his dark eyes on her. The soldiers will come. They will demand we return you. If I refuse, they may attack. Many could die, on both sides. If you go with them willingly, to testify that you came here of your own choice, that we offered only help, there is a chance they will listen. A small chance, but it exists. Sarah felt the weight of every person in the camp settling onto her shoulders. You're asking me to turn myself in. To go back. No, Tashunkamitu said firmly. I am asking you to stand before the soldiers and tell your truth. To be brave one more time. To save yourself not with flight, but with words. If they listen, if they believe you, then you can stay here legally. The army will have no grounds to interfere. But if they do not listen. He trailed off, but the implication was clear. If they did not listen, Sarah would be handed back to Marlowe, and all of this would have been for nothing. Margaret reached out and took Sarah's hand. I will stand with you. I will tell my story too. Tashunkamitu will speak for our character. We will make them see the truth. But Sarah knew how the world worked. She knew that the word of a Lakota chief and 2 women would carry little weight against the claims of a wealthy white man. The system was designed to protect men like Marlowe, not women like her. Yet what choice did she have? She could not live with herself if innocent people died because she was too afraid to face her demons. I'll do it, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'll tell them everything. The soldiers arrived on the morning of the 3rd day. 23 men in blue uniforms, their breath forming clouds in the frozen air, led by a lieutenant who looked barely old enough to shave. They rode into the camp with rifles ready but not aimed, a formation meant to intimidate without openly threatening. Tashunkamitu met them at the camp's edge, flanked by his warriors. The chief sat tall on his spotted pony, projecting calm authority that even the soldiers recognized. I am Lieutenant Howard, the young officer announced. We're here for Mrs. Sarah Marlowe. We have reports she's being held here against her will. No one is held here against their will, Tashunkamitu replied. The woman came to us fleeing violence. We offered shelter, as is our way. Nothing more. That's not what her husband says. Mr. Marlowe is a respected member of the business community. He's made serious accusations about kidnapping and assault. I have orders to retrieve his wife and bring anyone involved in her abduction back to face justice. Sarah stepped forward before the chief could respond. She had spent the past 3 days preparing for this moment, rehearsing what she would say, building courage from the support of the women around her. Now, wearing a simple dress Margaret had lent her, her feet still bandaged but able to walk, she moved to stand beside Tashunkamitu. I am Sarah Marlowe, she said clearly. I was not kidnapped. I ran for my life. Lieutenant Howard's expression flickered with uncertainty. Your husband is very worried about you. He says you've been ill, confused. He just wants to bring you home safely. My husband is a liar. The words came out strong and clear. Sarah had spent 6 months whispering, tiptoeing, making herself small. No more. He's also a murderer. His first wife didn't die of fever. He killed her. I found her diary. I know what he is. A murmur ran through the soldiers. Some looked uncomfortable. Others skeptical. Lieutenant Howard frowned. Those are serious allegations, Mrs. Marlowe. If true, they should be brought before the proper authorities. Like they were brought before proper authorities when Thomas Marlowe's first wife died? When the doctor listed fever as cause of death without questioning the bruises on her body? When her family accepted his story because he was wealthy and respected? Sarah's voice rose, passion breaking through her careful control. I went to those proper authorities, Lieutenant. I told the local sheriff about the abuse. Do you know what he said? He said it was a private matter between husband and wife. That perhaps if I tried harder to please my husband, there would be no need for discipline. Margaret stepped forward then, moving to Sarah's other side. I am Margaret Sullivan. 15 years ago, I ran from a similar situation. These people saved my life. They have never held me against my will. If I wanted to leave tomorrow, I could walk out of this camp with their blessing and supplies for the journey. Can you say the same about how white society treats its women? Ladies, please. Lieutenant Howard removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. I understand you may have had difficult experiences, but I have a job to do. Mr. Marlowe has legal documentation proving his marriage to Mrs. Marlowe. He has rights as her husband. Unless there's concrete evidence of criminal wrongdoing, I'm obligated to facilitate their reunion. You want evidence? Sarah reached into the pouch at her waist and pulled out a leather-bound book, its pages water-stained but readable. This is Catherine Marlowe's diary. Thomas's first wife. Read the last entries. Read about how he grew more violent, more controlling. Read how she planned to run. The entries stop on March 15, 1874. She was found dead March 16. She thrust the diary toward the lieutenant, who took it reluctantly. As he flipped through the pages, his face grew pale. Behind him, some of his men shifted uncomfortably in their saddles. This is disturbing, but it's not proof, the lieutenant said finally. And it doesn't change the law. You are legally his wife. Then your law is broken. Tashankamata's voice cut through the tension like a blade. If your law says a woman must return to a man who will kill her, then your law serves death, not justice. Among my people, such a law would be thrown out as foolish. A woman can leave a man who harms her. She can seek divorce. She has rights to her own person. Why do your people, who claim to be so civilized, treat women worse than we savages do? The question hung in the air, challenging everything the soldiers had been taught about superiority and civilization. Lieutenant Howard looked genuinely troubled now, torn between duty and conscience. Then hoofbeats sounded, and everyone turned. Thomas Marlowe rode into view, accompanied by another man in a suit and 3 additional riders. His expensive coat was clean, his face composed in an expression of concerned worry. When he saw Sarah, his mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the cold fury beneath. Then the worried husband returned. Sarah. Thank God you're safe. I've been so worried. He dismounted, moving toward her with outstretched arms. Sarah stepped back, positioning herself slightly behind Tashankamatu. Don't touch me. Darling, you're not well. These savages have confused you, filled your head with lies. Come with me, and we'll get you proper medical attention. He spoke to her like she was a child, his tone dripping with false concern. I'm not confused, Thomas. I'm finally thinking clearly. I know what you did to Catherine. I know what you plan to do to me. Marlowe's expression hardened. Lieutenant, this woman is clearly delusional. My first wife died of fever, properly documented by physicians. These accusations are products of hysteria and the influence of these Indians. I demand you fulfill your duty and return my property to me. Your property? Margaret's voice was sharp as glass. She's a human being, not a possession. She's my wife, bound to me by sacred vows before God. The law supports my rights. The man in the suit stepped forward. I am Judge Warren from the Territorial Court. I've reviewed the case. Mr. Marlowe's marriage certificate is legal and binding. While I understand there may be marital difficulties, the law is clear. A wife's place is with her husband. The allegations about his first wife are unsubstantiated speculation. Mrs. Marlowe must return with her husband. Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. The system was doing exactly what she knew it would, protecting the powerful man while dismissing the woman's testimony as hysteria. She looked at Tashankamatu, seeing anger and frustration in his eyes, but also something else. A signal. Wait. If Sarah must return to her husband, the chief said slowly, then she does so as a free woman making a choice, not as property being retrieved. This means she goes to town, not directly to his house. She stays somewhere public, where many can see her. If after 3 days in a safe place, with time to think clearly without fear, she chooses to remain his wife, then so be it. But if she chooses otherwise, she comes back here, and no one interferes. This is fair. This is just. Judge Warren frowned. That's highly irregular. So is sending soldiers to retrieve a woman who came willingly to seek shelter, Tashankamata countered. I offer compromise. Proof that we do not hold her against her will. 3 days for her to decide, in a place where both she and the white law feel safe. Or do you fear what her choice will be when she has true freedom to make it? The challenge was clear. Refuse, and admit the whole system was designed to deny women agency. Accept, and risk Sarah choosing to leave Marlowe permanently. Marlowe's face twisted. This is absurd. She's my wife. I'm taking her home now. No. Lieutenant Howard's voice was quiet but firm. The chief's proposal is reasonable. 3 days, Mrs. Marlowe stays at the boarding house in town, with guards if necessary to ensure her safety. Then she decides. If there's truly nothing wrong, you should have no objection to this, Mr. Marlowe. For a moment, Sarah thought Marlowe would refuse, would show his true nature to everyone present. But he was too clever for that. He forced his face into a tight smile. If that's what it takes to prove these accusations are false and return my wife to her senses, fine. 3 days. As the soldiers prepared to escort Sarah to town, Winona approached with a bundle. Warm clothes for the journey. And this. She pressed something small and hard into Sarah's palm. A knife, small enough to conceal, sharp enough to matter. You are not alone, Winona whispered. Remember that. Whatever happens, you are not alone. Sarah rode out between the soldiers, leaving the camp behind. But this time, she rode not as a victim fleeing into winter, but as a woman choosing her own path. 3 days to convince the world of what she knew in her heart. 3 days to prove that sometimes, the savage thing was refusing to save yourself, and the civilized thing was believing that a woman's voice mattered as much as any man's. As they crested the hill, Sarah looked back one last time. Tushunkamita sat on his horse, watching. Even at this distance, she could feel his faith in her, his belief that truth would prevail. She hoped desperately that he was right, because if he wasn't, she would need that knife Winona had given her for one final, desperate act of freedom. The story was not over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But Sarah Crawford rode toward town with her head held high, ready to fight not with flight, but with the one weapon they couldn't take from her, her voice, telling the truth that needed to be heard. The end.